that state of being I am a victim is kind of the very bottom of the downward pointing triangle of the descension spiral of fragmentation. And it's important that we touch that. It's important that we experience that. That's very valid. It's part of our files, right? I'm here in the outdoor library section of this beautiful development. And that's an important part of the files, but we were never meant to just stay there as the totality of our identity construct. We were meant to touch it for contrast to inform something else. And so that something else, there's the invitation in future moments of feeling negative emotions, in negative patterns. We take all the guilt off the top of, I can't believe I'm here again. That's not worth our time. But to say, almost like, yippee, I'm here again. I must get another chance to radically, fundamentally change the foundation of my being. Welcome to this safe space in which we're exploring the frontiers of human evolution through our own multidimensionality. Hello and welcome back to the Beyond Conscious Becoming Multidimensional podcast. I'm Aisha Love, your host and the founder of Multidimensional You. In episode 3, we're going to be talking about releasing old patterns. For those of you, especially in the healing fields, that would be mental health counseling, energy healers even, and beyond, you may find yourself wondering, why do some of the people you work with, or indeed yourself, circle back to old patterns? So here's what came through bright and early one morning in the spring of 2021. As a pattern of soul growth, a person will enter back into a destructive relationship or pattern in order to recreate the emotions that accompanied the original wounding. For example, if your needs were unmet by a parent, you will continue to need that partner, friend, boss, colleague, fill in the blank, that disappoints you in the same way until you are willing to make a different choice for yourself. Once you've healed these patterns, you can rise above the din. This means you no longer lose touch with the more integral aspects of your being and enter a state of fragmented forgetfulness. So I know many of you are trauma-informed. This is wonderful. This is a big shift in the collective. There's a totally different conversation around addiction. We're removing shame from all of this. I would point us back to a prior episode where we got out of any sort of making mistakes. I think that was the very first episode in the series. This isn't about getting things right or wrong. It's about transcending what we have been. The frustration that can come of even yourself repeating old patterns. What I'm being shown right now is it's really important to step out of any sort of judgment. Indeed, maybe look at the frustration and what that's signaling to you. I'm being shown a sense of despair or hopelessness. And some of that is innate, based on a lot of experience where things didn't go the way we had hoped, especially as healers, what you might think of yourself as the old soul starseed. But more importantly, there's a lot of manufactured discontent, disharmony, despair. So almost like I'm being shown giving permission for everyone to take maybe like at least 50% of that feeling just right off the top of like, wait a minute, this is being curated, and we don't need to get into who and why and all of that. Just suffice it to say that would be a self-serving agenda that's very short-sighted and is taking the very long road home. And you don't have to participate in that. So 50% of it you can take off the top, which I know from personal experience that when I've been in a depressed state, I can get depressed about being depressed. There can be shame and feeling like you're not doing something right if you feel down. So being able to take 50% or more of that right off the top and say, well, it's not even mine to begin with. Now go ahead and look at the other half and work with the other half of why am I in this negative pattern again? Okay, so that's helpful. So almost like making sure that we're really only working on that which is ours, not the collectives. A lot of empaths can feel the human collective and everything they're dealing with. And we can't always discern what is curated disharmony being broadcast into the collective field that we're picking up on, and what is true disharmony coming from human experience. And I realize those of you who are tuned in can see how tangled up it gets in there, because at some point you really can't separate one from the other. Like you can't separate the egg from the yolk almost, is what I'm being shown. They come in like the same package. But indeed we can. And with discernment, we can begin to really separate these things out. So going back to the download I received, it's about recreation. So we go back into old patterns in order to give ourselves another go, is what I'm being shown, another attempt at doing this differently. And doing differently means choosing to narrate the story, choosing to feel, choosing to think, choosing to believe something different this time. And maybe you have to just do it in the beginning out of, you can't divest the feeling from the experience, right? You feel maybe overwhelmed by the feeling that comes with the negative pattern. Put on your scientist hat, your explorer hat, and just be curious. What if I chose to think the complete opposite of whatever that very disempowering feeling or thought is? Just to try it on. Like we go in the store and we try on different clothes, don't we? So maybe we could try on different choices in what we choose to think or believe or feel. Just to kind of give ourselves a little bit of latitude in what is possible in that moment in terms of how we feel and changing how we feel. Not that we're trying to shame and trauma shame somebody for feeling a certain way, but just to open up new possibilities about what could be a new feeling given a similar set of circumstances that perhaps in the past were very triggering back into that old pattern from an old wound, right? Usually from childhood or maybe other referential experiences in this planetary experience and even beyond. We're working as a collective and individually on Earth at this special time, this very specific time, on some pretty big renovations across our multidimensional selves. So if for any length of time you think that the human that your consciousness is animating is some small, insignificant fractal, I'd like to invert that for you. Just flip that upside down. We're working in a very specific, unique set of, let's just call them vibronics right now, and conditions that has the potential to inform so much more of the reality fields that we're connected to. So this is another encouragement to take this not seriously. Again, we want it to be nice and light, but to give yourself far more credit than I'm being shown you do. I'm being asked to unpack an example of what we're talking about. Sometimes it's easier to see, often easier to see, not your own particular pattern, but someone else's. So we start with the unpleasant feeling. Maybe feeling really frustrated. Maybe our feelings get really hurt. And it's all on the inside. Maybe we're not even talking about this with another person. So here's a good example. If someone interrupts you in conversation, well, perhaps it's not the most socially graceful interaction, but the intensity of the frustration, perhaps even rage that you might experience, is due to feeling talked over or unheard, not listened to, invalidated very early in this life, and maybe chronically, to the point where that surface behavior and experience, which is just neutral in and of itself, became a story about yourself not being worthy of being heard. And that's the deep, gaping wounds that presents itself when we get really triggered and creates a certain feeling, usually of feeling like a victim. And feeling like a victim can be a very addictive cocktail of physiological chemicals and emotions. But there are many people dealing with that. What I'm being shown is to zoom out and see that state of being, I am a victim, is kind of the very bottom of the downward pointing triangle of the descension spiral of fragmentation. And it's important that we touch that. It's important that we experience that. That's very valid. It's part of our files, right? I'm here in the outdoor library section of this beautiful development. And that's an important part of the files, but we were never meant to just stay there as the totality of our identity construct. We were meant to touch it for contrast to inform something else. And so that something else, there's the invitation in future moments of feeling negative emotions, in negative patterns. We take all the guilt off the top of, I can't believe I'm here again. That's not worth our time. But to say, almost like, yippee, I'm here again. I must get another chance to radically, fundamentally change the foundation of my being. Here's I'm getting another crack at it. I got another chance up at bat, right? So pitch me the baseball, pitch me the softball. Let's see what I can do this time. And so the download talked about once we've healed these patterns, and I really feel the need for some reason in this moment to delve very deep into the word heal. And basically, I'm getting reference back to the first episode of Yourself, Reclaiming Yourself as Source. So healing is rendering the fragmented state, the wounded state, the disharmonic, diseased state void by going into the void with it. And allowing, again, it's not to say it never happened or minimize or avoid it, deny it, but to say that no longer defines me. I'm going to bring that back into the void, the 0 point of stillness with everything else I want to bring in there to release. And then that which comes forward from that great still point has been informed by, inspired by, shaped by, molded by that experience of feeling trapped as a victim in whatever negative pattern. And so this becomes high alchemy. And that's what the download talked about in terms of rise above the din. You begin to not be just the result of your experiences, but you are the intentional, intelligent, creational presence that is gathering up its files, its reference material, in order to evolve, grow, emanate, create something else. And something else, let's qualify that. We're talking about creating a reality where the foundation is love, not fear, where there is harmony, not disharmony, where there is ease, not dis-ease, where there is flow, not stagnation, where there is abundance, not scarcity, and on and on and on. It's important to have patience with these negative patterns and flip the frustration and impatience, which impatience is just resistance to what is, around to have now appreciation and gratitude that they are surfacing again. So many times, right, we find ourselves on a different part of the spiral of like, whoa, I'm back here on this again. And maybe we thought we had finished that. Nice try. And so again, do you see the mindset is shifting and inverting, like so much of this work is inverting. If you just take an inversion as your process, you're probably going to do pretty well in this evolutionary growth ascension process, because there's a lot of inversion in this reality field, right? So if love is actually our birthright, but what do we most of us get really conditioned with, and what is the collective stuck in is fear, right? So you can just see examples of this over and over and over again as a little like reality hack tip. Then the final thing that is being called in to expound upon is the line about this means you no longer lose touch with the more integral aspects of your being and enter a state of fragmented forgetfulness. I'm being asked to expound on that, to say it's not as if you will never experience trauma, you will never feel fragmented or spun out ever again. It's just that the duration of that fragmentation, of that spin out, of losing center, will continue to grow shorter and shorter and shorter. Each episode or duration of that is informative and valuable and gives you very helpful information, almost like an archaeological excavation. But it doesn't mean that you're back at, zero again. You're not back at the beginning. You didn't slide all the way back down of the game of Candyland, right? It just means that now you're in refinement. Just take a moment to feel great appreciation and gratitude for all of the negative patterns that have been surfacing and see them so differently. They're like the raw material that you're working with that you can and will alchemize as you move forward. Sending you all so much love as you bring all this fragmentation home. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Beyond Conscious Becoming Multidimensional. If something in the episode really spoke to you, or you have a follow-up question, don't hesitate to write in. You can learn more about my programs and events and listen to past episodes at multidimensionalu.love. Yes, that spells love.